foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Murcha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And I'm going to go through the book of Isaiah, the 14th chapter. It's most of the time, we go into Isaiah 14 and we really hit on specific verses. Okay, but I tried looking it up. There's not really too many breakdowns on Isaiah 14 out there. But nevertheless, it's good to go through these breakdowns, these full chapter breakdowns, like the apostles have been saying. Okay, so nevertheless, let's go through it. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 1. And it reads, right? It reads. It doesn't say, it doesn't talk. It reads. But it says here, "For the Lord Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob." Okay, now the Lord Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob. We know Jacob represents the nation of Israel. Okay, it's another name for the children of Israel, or the Israelites. "And will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land," which that land is the land of Israel, which currently, where it's not under our control, right? But when the Lord comes, he's going to set us there. It says, "And the strangers shall be joined with them." Now, the strangers here are referring to Israelites. Okay, these strangers are referring to Israelites, not heathen nations. Okay, but the Israelites, as it says, shall be joined with them. Meaning, like, for example, we at one point were strangers, right? Because at one point we didn't know that we were Israelites, right? We didn't have the true understanding of our heritage of the Lord or any of that. But through the Lord's mercy, as each of us was woken up by the spirit of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, all right, we became joined onto already those that were woken up. Okay, so the strangers here are referring to Israelites. It says, "And they shall cleave to the house of Jacob." Okay, which is an example, like I said, is what we're doing now. Verse 2, it says, "And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord." Now, in verse 2, the context switches a little bit, right? Because now it says, dealing with the pronouns, "And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids." So who is the them that is referring to here in verse 2? The them in verse 2 are these other nations. Okay, the house of Israel being the Israelites, starting with the elect. We're going to possess, okay, these heathen nations, starting with Esau, in the land of the Lord, which is the land of Israel. So when the Lord brings us back there, we're going to possess them for servants and handmaids. And that's a part of prophecy. "And they shall take them captives whose captives they were." And we have been captives to all these other nations at one point or another. A quick precept for that is, let me see. Nation hath not had. And Lord willing, I'll try to keep the precepts fairly short and little, because for time's sake, so I can actually get through the actual breakdown. Typically that's what happens. You've got so many precepts, then it drags the lesson on and on and on. But I mean, it's all for edification anyway. I know it's in the book of Maccabees. Give me 1 second. Okay, let's do this. "For what nation had not had a part in," let's see, Bible. Yeah, First Maccabees 2 and 10. Let's get that real quick. Maccabees chapter 2, verse 10. Here we go. So this is the book of First Maccabees chapter 2, and I'm going to start at verse 9. Really, verse 8, it says, "Her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels." Now, at this time, this is they consider this the intertestamental period. So between the Old Testament and the New Testament, which is where you have the history of the Greek the Greeks ruling, okay, is recorded mainly in these mainly in the book of Maccabees, right? So how they affected us, and so on and so forth. Then you go to the New Testament, you have the account of the Romans and how life was like being under the Romans. So it says here, her temple, which is the temple, hers referring to us or Jerusalem, right, is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets, her young men with the sword of the enemy. What nation hath not had a part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils? See, so at one point or another, all these nations have had us as captives. And so, as it says here, we're going to take them captives, whose captives we were. And they shall rule over their oppressors, right? And rightfully so. Okay, this honor have all his saints, right? So we're going to have that honor of being in power and having these other nations under us. We're going to rule over them. Verse 3 says, and it shall come to pass, so that's a prophecy, right? It shall come to pass in the day that the Lord Yahweh shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve. And up till today, we don't have that rest. That rest is going to be in the kingdom of heaven. So with whatever captivity we've been in, we've constantly been in that sorrow, okay, and that fearing for your life, fearing whatever the oppressor could do to you, so on and so forth. And as it says, and from the hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve. So throughout all the different captivities, especially here in Babylon or America, we've been serving in our hard bondage, okay, since we were brought here. So the Lord is going to give us rest from that. And it's going to start with his elect. Verse 4 says that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. Now the king of Babylon, it prophetically, it represents, because who is a king? A king is a ruler of a nation. So the king of Babylon would be whoever is the ruler at the time, which right now is this guy, Biden, for however long he's going to be there for. Whether Trump is going to get back up in there, whether whatever's going to happen. Okay. It says here, and really, I mean, ultimately, we know that the ones really running them are these elites behind the scenes anyway. Okay, so really, they're the ones behind the scenes pulling the strings. It says, and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? Right, because who's a bigger oppressor from a nation standpoint than the U.S.? They go into other countries and they go and oppress them there. As a matter of fact, and when you think of Babylon, it's a nation, but it's sort of like a representation. Like if we were to classify lands and identify them with people, Babylon would be a representation of Esau. Okay, because he uses Babylon to go around, and Babylon meaning America, and do whatever it is that he wants to do, to set the example that he wants, to dominate certain areas. Okay, now this is the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2. Let's see, there's one. Let's see, oppress a man. Yeah, there we go, Micah 2:2. All right, it says here, let me start at 1. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds, which right now primarily that's who? Esau, Edom. When the morning is light, they practice it behind upon their beds, meaning behind closed doors. So when they have these meetings and so on and so forth, they're devising iniquity. They're putting together these wicked plans behind closed doors. And when the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hands. So they bring it to light, so to speak, because they have the ability and the power to do so. Verse 2, and they covet fields and take them by violence. So they might just bomb your ass or start a civil war in your country if you have something valuable in there that they want. And houses and take them away, so that they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. Okay, so there you go. And that's because they are the biggest oppressors. So carrying on, back in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 4. So it says that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. Because at one point, this place was the top dog. You couldn't mess with this place. But how are we going to gain that rest from our hard bondage? The Most High is going to take this place down by sending Yahushua. And that's when this place is going to cease. That's when the oppressor is going to become the oppressed. And the oppressed is going to become the oppressor. And the so-called golden city, which represents America or Babylon, is going to fall. It says, the Lord, verse 5, the Lord Yahweh hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. And the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers represents their power, their rulership, their authority. All right, the staff and the scepter is a symbol of authority, of power. And the Lord is going to break that. He's going to break it internally with these disasters, ultimately with Jacob's trouble in World War III, and he's going to break it ultimately when he sends Yahushua back. Verse 6, he who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke. Who is that? Esau. With a continual stroke, right? So he's been smiting and oppressing since he came up into power. He started through deception, gained enough power, and then now with his military might and his ridiculous political control and financial control, he goes around, and as it says, he who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and none hindereth. Because at the end of the day, what happens is these nations put up. Okay, they put up with Babylon. They put up with Esau, but they don't actually like this devil. See, so when they go down, nobody's going to object. Yeah, in Revelation 18, it talks about how these merchants are going to be standing afar off and, weeping alas for this place is destroyed where they were made rich. But at the end of the day, that's only because they've lost their means of making that money that they used to make, not because they actually care about Babylon or Esau. Verse 7, it says, the whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yeah, because everything is going to go back to being peaceful again once this devil gets taken out of power. Right now, the earth is mourning. The animals are mourning. The people are mourning. He's destroying the atmosphere. He's destroying the ecosystem. He's destroying the ozone layer. He's destroying the water. You have sharks and whales and dolphins beaching themselves. That's pretty much committing suicide because they don't want to continue to live under those conditions anymore. Oil spills, chemical waste, trash in the ocean. I mean, he's just destroying all forms of life. So when he's taken out, the whole earth is going to be at rest. It's going to become a paradise again. Verse 8, it says, yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us. Now, let's see. All right, but for time's sake, I might break this up into two parts, part 1, part 2, for time's sake. But let's see how the spirit goes. So it says, yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us. Now, a feller is one that cuts down trees. All right, so let's look into the word feller. Okay, it says here, karath, to cut down, cut off, to hew, right? And when you hew, typically you think of like hewing wood, for example. Okay, so a feller here is one that cuts down trees. And Esau, what they call like deforestation, for example, what they do is since they want to industrialize everything, they'll go in there and show you how much of a devil this guy is and how it affects the ecosystem. Because when you go up into, or when you look at how North America used to be, when Gad and Reuben and the Northern Kingdom was over here, it was a paradise. What I mean by that is it was a beautiful, foresty, but habitable land with different creatures and so on and so forth. But when Esau came here, he started cutting down all them trees, making space, and basically creating a concrete jungle. And what that does is the less trees you have around, because when you look around these cities, those things are not real trees, man. Those things look dead. They look like zombie trees. They don't bear any fruit, but somehow they survive, and they in the winter they're gone, no leaves, and then in the spring they come back, and in the fall they turn brown and they go down. But a lot of these, man, they don't even give you fresh air, and trees are important because they take in the carbon dioxide and then they convert it, they use it, and they give you oxygen. But this devil says, nah, F that. Now, there's nothing wrong with cutting down trees. You need to cut down trees to build, to make space, for the material and so on and so forth. But the thing about this devil is he just takes everything overboard. So this is put an emphasis on how even the trees are going to rejoice when he goes down. Verse 9, hell from beneath is moved to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. Now, in verse 9, and pretty much in verse 10, it's also a metaphorical way of emphasizing how when Esau goes down, everybody's going to rejoice. As a matter of fact, in verse 9, it's pretty much saying that even the grave, because when it says hell is referring to the grave over here, even the grave is excited, to meet Esau, to receive him. So the whole earth is excited to have this devil go out of power, right? As it says, hell from beneath is moved to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee. And when you look up that word, to stir up, it means to excite. Once again, but it's metaphorically put an emphasis on how even the grave and the dead are ready to receive Esau, meaning it's about time for him to go out of power, for him to come down into that low state. It says, even all the chief ones of the earth. So all those different rulers and so-called top dogs of these other nations, it hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? Because see, for example, at one point you had the Egyptians. They were a superpower. And in their time, if you went back in time and you were living maybe during the time of Moses or during the time of Egypt, during the time of when Joseph came up in there and through the famine, they were made great and so on and so forth, you would look at Egypt as, damn, this place is like, how can a kingdom like this ever go down? So, but now you look at the Egyptians, the Mizraim, you're like, who the what? The who? What? Them? They used to rule at one point? So, because they became weak, their time was over, right? You look at Nineveh, right? The Assyrians, the Greeks, like all of them at one point were in high positions, but they all had their time, and now they're not even looked at as what they used to be. Even the Persians, the modern day Iranians. When you go back to the time when they were in rulership, the Achaemenid Empire and so on and so forth, they were a force to be reckoned with. And the same thing is going to happen to Esau. He's going to be brought down and brought low and made weak. And that's why they're saying, art thou become weak as we? Because you at one point were sitting upon the whole world. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked, right? The whore that sitteth upon that dragon, that beast. Verse 11, thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vials. The worm is spread under thee, and the worm cover thee, or the worms cover thee. Okay, and when you go into that word pomp, see what it says in the Hebrew, the Hebrew. All right, we have here Ga'awan or Gawan. It says exaltation, right? Pride. So pride, arrogance. And why is that? Because they I think in Isaiah 47 it says, thou hast said in thy heart, I am a God and none else. Pretty much that's that pride. But that's gonna cease. That's gonna be brought down, as it says, to the grave. Because remember, from verse 9 and 10 on down, it's describing how Esau is gonna go down, but it's also saying in a metaphorical way, right? because obviously the grave is not going to open up and jump up to grab Esau and pull him in it. Okay, so it says that thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vials. The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. Because once again, when somebody dies or they're put in the grave, what happens? Eventually their body decomposes, and you have worms that spread out and fill their bodies and so on and so forth, right? That's part of the process of their body decomposing. Okay, but also this represents, on the flip side, going into Esau's infrastructure. Okay, so just like when worms develop in something, you know that thing is broken down. That thing is wasted. Okay, it's decomposing, and that's the same thing metaphorically or representing Esau's infrastructure. Okay, it's also breaking down. All right. Let's see, verse 12. I'll probably end the first part on this verse 12, and Lord willing, I'll do a part 2, just to finish the whole chapter. So verse 12, it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?" Which, let me just finish it. It says, "How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" Now, when it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven," this verse is not talking about a spiritual demon, Satan. It's verse 12. It's not even referring to Satan at all. This Lucifer is talking about Esau. Okay, their elites, the so-called illuminary ones, the enlightened ones, the Illuminati, them. And when it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven," this heaven is not referring to the actual spiritual world where the Most High is. Okay, this heaven is referring to their state of rulership or authority or power or dominion. So it's saying here, "How have you fallen?" Because when you read from even a couple verses all the way up on down, it's the same sentiment that's being echoed, right? How is this devil fallen? How is the golden city ceased? How his pomp is going to be brought down to the grave. So it's talking about how Esau is going to go down. He's going to be taken out of power. It says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, from your state of power and dominion and rulership, O Lucifer, son of the morning," which is another way of saying the day dawn, okay, or the which Lucifer means what's that, light bearer? I think in the Hebrew it's a Hayalal. And the scriptures tell you, right, that how does it word it? The children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. Yeah, it's Hayalal, right? It says light bearer, okay, shining one, morning star. So it's all referring to the same thing, and this is referring to Esau, right? These elites, as they refer to themselves as the luminaries or whatever. It says, "How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" So when you look at the position that these devils are in, the control and the grasp that they have over the world, and for them to be taken down, right, as it's putting emphasis on it, how? You're the one who owned 3/5 of the world's wealth, who controlled and funded both sides of the war, who run this. The world looks at you, for talking about Babylon, and reports things that are going on here. You spread your cancer on the whole world. So how are you cut down? Who went around dominating everywhere? Somebody says they have gold, you pop up in there and tell them you're going to take a look at it for them. You going up into areas, deposing and taking off their rulers and setting up puppet rulers. So for you to be able to do all of this, how are you falling from your rulership? How did you possibly come down to this lower state? And that's going to be through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. So with that, I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. Like I said, Lord willing, I will come back and do a part 2 just to finish the whole chapter. But for time's sake, I got to end it here. So with that, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha, Kudash. Until next time, Shalom.